Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I want to get into another conversation from a comment on my YouTube channel. If you have interest in me responding to your questions or queries, drop a comment with your IGN, and if I respond, creating a video like this, and if you leave that IGN, I'll send you a thank you afterwards. Okay, so let's get one of these ones. I thought this might be in and of itself a substantial conversation, maybe meriting its own video. So we're talking today about a question by Mitchell McGuire, and he said, love your content. It's talking about Waka. So we're going to talk about Waka today, and we're going to talk about maybe a different vantage point. Like some people don't necessarily think he's as bad as I do. So let's hear what Mitchell has to say on the issue, and maybe I can be convinced. I don't own Waka. I don't have extensive experience with Waka. Let's read the comment and go from there. Mitchell McGuire says, love your content. One thing I have to say I disagree with you on is your criticism of Waka. I mean, I can respect you saying you don't think he's a good summoner, but I don't think you can really rely on the Summoner Lab stats to really draw hard conclusions. I mean, it's certainly good to reference, but I would like to posit that if you pull up the card, the stats on a card like Waka, and there's 18 battles, which is a sample size of Waka and Champion, or even let's say 100, that really isn't a large sample size. Yeah, that's true. This is a strong point. Even if each battle was a standard rule set. Yeah, and of course every battle has a different rule set. So so far I'm agreeing with you, Mitchell. Let's see what else you have to say here. When you take into account the wide variation in match conditions, I have a feeling a lot of cards' stats might not reflect their best use cases in win conditions, and there's also a large degree of player variability. If Waka is played 100 times by 20 players, and 10 of those players might simply not know how to use him well, when to play him. Don't get me wrong, I think the stats in Summoner Lab is really cool. I just don't think the sample sizes are big enough in Diamond and Champion to merit stats being used to draw strong conclusions about cards' values. When the sample sizes are so low, like 100 might be more than 10 battles when you are looking at it. Relative, but 100 really isn't a large sample size in my IML. In my logic, in my life, I don't know what IML means. In my opinion, I'm familiar with in my IMO, but I don't know this one. Anyways, I think Waka is decent and low to low mid mana battles, and the scarcity does matter. I think this game is going to be huge. I feel like it's easy to see how at 3 energy summoners, a 3 energy summoner that looks badass on Waka Flocka, with only 500 in existence would have a value. Now, a lot there. I want to quickly agree with some things. I disagree with some other things. I want to circle back and maybe expand some of my own previous points and what I said about Waka. And maybe draw some conclusions, because I think you're making a lot of sense, Mitchell. Thank you for that. Next, I see you didn't leave your IGN. Next time you leave a comment, please drop your IGN. Or if you see this video, go ahead and drop a comment with your IGN. And if I remember, this is the trick, guys. I get really busy. I do 2 videos every day. I've got family and friends and real world work also. So I can't always promise. If you drop a comment on the video that I'm recording now, I may be able to catch you and send a thank you after the fact, but it's so much better and easier for me if you leave it in the original. Okay, so the first thing, like the easy stuff for me to just agree with, is that you're right, the sample size of 100. And let's pop over even now. Let's go look at Summoner Lab. Let's look up Waka. There he is. Now, across all league levels, all of them, he only has 88 battles, and this is over the last like 2 weeks. I think the data works on this website. It's something like a 2-week rolling sample. It might be 1 week, I forget exactly. It's been a while since I talked to the creator of this website, but this is a great website. I love it. This content, this data is valuable. But Mitchell's right. 88 is a very small sample size, and that's across every league level. And of course, bronze is different than silver, silver is different than gold, gold is different than diamond, and diamond's different than champion. So how do we draw meaningful conclusions out of 88 battles across, every league? And the truth is we can't really. I am firmly agreeing with you that this sample size is too small to really rely on this data. So then you can narrow it down and go into bronze only, and you see, wow, he's got a 75% win rate in bronze. I would argue this is, even 30 battles is probably enough to really start pointing something out. I do think that Waka is probably in the right situation with the right pilot, meaning like you, the user, using him in the right moment and whatnot. I would argue this is indicative of Waka having real utility at the lower level, which is funny because the lower level is almost where you'd imagine Waka is not necessary, because this is a max level summoner. You can't get him in level 3 or level 2 or level 1. He has to be level 4. So that's part of why he's so expensive, and he's rare, but let's talk more about that later. So 32 battles is small, but I watch these trends, right? Like if you come back and you look at Waka in a week or two, you're going to see new battle data from that rolling tracking metric. And so it'll be a new 32 battles at bronze. And if you remember, you got 75% today on September 4th, maybe in the middle of September, you might come back and see that he has 80% win rate at, for another 20 battles. That really is going to be affirming the fact that within bronze, given a certain set of rules, maybe these rule sets, because in this data pool, these were helpful for him. With this data pool, these were some of the enemies that he was weak against, and so on. My point is, you can begin to rely on this data, even though it's an incomplete and small sample size. And I do think this indicates something, although I definitely agree you're right. This is not a strong sample size and therefore data pool. But if you go on and you look at silver and you see 6 battles, that's so much worse. I mean, I don't know how to interpret that at all. That could be, as you pointed out in your comment, this could be used 6 times by one person who was just testing out Waka and has no idea how to use them, no idea what poison is for that matter, right? It could be a brand new user who rented a deck into silver and rented Waka because he was maybe affordable that day and used him for 6 different battles, knows nothing about it or how to use it. That's a problem in terms of when you get that few battles. So I'm strongly agreeing with you that Waka, the data pool, is hard to rely upon, but I still think it points us to something. And as I said in this video, and maybe I should reiterate here, in the higher levels, you see a struggle. 32 battles, 43% at gold. Diamond, 18 battles, 33%. And I think if you were to isolate champion alone, this is diamond and champion, but if you were to isolate champion alone, I bet it's like 3 battles or 4 battles, and it's, it's probably mostly losses. So yes, it's a small sample size, but I don't think that means that we can't put any weight on this data. But I also don't think you're saying that. I kind of think you're saying we just need to be careful about how much we rely on that data. I think that's fair. And then you go on to say, yeah, this is something important, guys. When you take into account the versatility or the variability across battles in this game and the win conditions for every battle being so different, it's really important to understand. One, I think you begin to understand the replay ability for this game, the fun of this game, but also the complexity. And that complexity means that it's really hard to say if a card is bad unless you've tried it in the multitude of battle sets. This rule set with that rule set, this rule set with a different rule set, low mana cap, high mana cap, and so on. You've got a good deck to accompany your Waka, or you've got a poor deck. All of these variabilities you are going to contribute to your ability or inability to win with them. And so it's deeply important to recognize that, because this comes back to a point that I've made lots of times on the channel, and I'll make again. The meta in this game is always changing because the game is always changing. The rule sets, there's new rule sets, there's new focuses, there's new card packs, there's new reward cards, and all these intermingle in different ways that create such versatility. And that's an amazing testament to where the likelihood this game will be around in the future. But the important point that I often make on this issue is that the meta is really hard to understand what cards are going to be meta in the future. And when we get new cards or new summoners, and I would say Waka is still new in the sense of it's only been here for, I think, a few months. I'm going to say probably 4 months, might be less. But also there hasn't been a great adoption of him. And therefore there isn't a huge sample size of gameplay. And that means we don't even necessarily understand how to use him well. Of course, you can theorize that if you attack from multiple angles, you're going to maximize the dropping of poison and therefore potentially the killing of him. But I would have said before looking at this data that he would really thrive at where his best place would be in the higher levels. And yet it seems as though his best place is in the lower leagues. And so theories are one thing and practice is another. And that's the thing about the meta of this game is you might imagine that something would fit in a certain specific manner, but then how it actually plays out because of the interconnectedness of all the cards and the rule sets and the mana caps and the focuses and how that triggers certain play versus by the players in the leagues. All of it is so hard to understand that you need to watch the organic progression of a meta. And in that, learn and notice quickly when you start to see kind of almost, there'll be, what I've noticed is that there will be moments where there'll be a parabolic kind of adoption of a certain card. And I've seen it happen in the past with like Kelp Initiate or with Mylor or who else? With Failed Summoner. Who else? Certain cards that, you know, these are I think those all might be reward cards. No. Mylor is a dice. But the point is, a card comes out and we're not really sure how it's going to be utilized maximally. Is it going to be really all that good, or is it just okay? Or frankly, is it bad too? And it takes a lot of play. And then at some point, there's a combination that's discovered and a way of using that ability and that rule set. Sorry, not rule set. That kit that can be discovered by certain creative players, and then that sparks replication because one, other players who get beat by it say, wow, that worked, I'm going to try that myself. And then two, eventually bots catch wind and they proliferate these rule sets, these playing styles. And so I guess my point is just, I feel strongly that, you know, we don't ever really know how effective a card is. We only do after, most of us only do after the most creative people in the game identify its utility, its maximum and most effective utility, and they beat us over the head with that technique. And then we start to copy, and then the bots grab hold, and suddenly you see it every match. But Waka may well be a guy that sneaks in there and slowly kind of becomes that slow adopted unit. But I would almost hesitate to say no because, or I mean, I'm still leaning towards no because one, it's a max level summoner. Two, it's $700. Three, it does have a low win rate. And even though I could probably explain away some of that because we don't necessarily know what we're doing, plus, you know, there's a low sample size, I still think there's a good enough sample size to indicate that it's not strong. Now, is it niche and does it have a great opportunity to provide victory in certain contexts? I think that's almost certainly true. And that, at least that niche component of this card, is probably going to get better and stronger and more defined as we move forward in the game. So that all bodes well for your argument. But I think at the end of the day, I would have to conclude with one final point, which is that the idea that, you know, the sample size is small, he's kind of strong in certain conditions, he's probably going to get more, the ways to use him wisely will be more and more identified. I agree. But right now, he's going to cost you $700. And for that same price, you can buy a crazy amount of other summoner cards. And that's where the conversation just ends to me. Like when I look at Mimosa Nightshade and I see that the max level Mimosa is 650, and I see a max level Waka is 650, that conversation's over. Like, period, full stop. And Mimosa is hands down stronger. Now, again, Mimosa is niche, and you might argue Mimosa is not very strong, and I think that's a fair suggestion. But you know, if it's one versus the other, if it's literally this or that, I'm going Mimosa. Now, I probably wouldn't go one or the other. I would say to myself, well, what about a Quixodevious, which can play all the same death cards and introduces some dragon cards and is so much cheaper? A max level one of these is going to be $200, you know? That's ridiculous. You could buy three of these and have $50 left over and rent the two of them out for rental profit. That would, you know, help your team and what you're doing here in Splinterlands. You could go Grandmaster Wraith, which is a totally different vibe, but I think he's really strong and undervalued. You could try something altogether different, like sticking to the Death Splinter and paying a bit more. I find, where is he? How did I lose him? Oh, because I'm looking at Epic. And go regular. I really, really like Cryptomancer, but there, you know, the price is just not, that's not even in the same ballpark, so never mind that. What about Ouster? Ouster's going to cost you, way cheaper. I'm going to say, you know, 3, 4, maybe 6, maybe 550, 600. So not way cheaper, but I still think Ouster is better. And I almost want to look at the data to kind of push that conversation home. But Ouster, in my mind, strikes me as better. Mimosa is better. Cryptomancer is way better, but of course so expensive. Thaddeus is better, man. Thaddeus is a pretty strong summoner, in my opinion. In the right context, and none of these. And Contessa for the price, like 197 for a max Contessa. I like the 3 mana also, that gives you that 1 more mana. And then when you get into that conversation where you're like, if you follow me to the point where you're like, okay, look, Waka's not necessarily terrible, and I do exaggerate, and I kind of give him a hard time just to be funny, right? He's not terrible, and he probably will have his use case. He definitely will have his use case. And, you know, he's a promo card with a good amount of collection power. And you're right, scarcity matters, and the price appreciation is probably going to come to a card like that. But all that said, I think if I had $650 or $700 to invest in a death level summoner, it wouldn't be Waka. And it would probably be pretty much any other one. And if we just quickly look at the win rates on the death team, erase Waka, and we go summoners. You know, depends what league you're playing at, but if you're playing at the highest levels, there's that Cryptmancer just crushing it. There's Mimosa with their 50% win rate. Zintar, but Zintar probably plays very few. Yeah, 44 battles for Zintar, 28 for Mimosa. Look at this, 30 for Ouster. Not again. All of these are niche then. All of them are on the niche level for the diamond level. Let's see. 98 from Thaddeus with a 43% win rate. That's a low win rate, but it's a lot better than 33%. And this is only on 18 battles. And I bet there's only 6 of them that are in champion or something like that, right? So huge difference. And this is going to cost me $200 and this is going to cost me $650. And so that's where, to me, the conversation ends. It's like, yes, I'll grant you he's not as bad as I made out. I'll grant you that he's rare and therefore will probably appreciate significantly. I'll even grant you that we'll probably grow in our understanding of the game as the meta evolves, because it always evolves, and Waka will find his place and be niche and helpful and successful in certain contexts. But nevertheless, man, I can't argue with a $200 summoner when I can't compare it to a $200 summoner. I just have to say Thaddeus, hands down, superior. And if you're willing to, I think Mimosa is superior in a big way in the right context again. But even that, you might then say, well, forget about Mimosa, just go with your Thaddeus. And I think that would be a valid conversation to have, because if you had $650 to spend on a summoner, or $650 to spend on cards for your death team. What about buying a $200 summoner and putting $450 into death monster cards? And what could that do to change your win rate, right? Turning a 43% win rate into a more successful death team overall. And this is just a diamond, but if we look at gold, you see different, so whatever league you're playing in, but again, some really high win rates for some of these cards. And there he is. He's a bottom feeder. So I definitely exaggerated. And it's a strong card in some contexts, in niche contexts. But when you guys are building decks, and this will land the playing guys, if you're building a deck in Splinterlands or any collectible card game, you don't just want, unless you have a ton of money to spend, you can't really focus on building niche, bits, right? Like, it's really important you have versatility and that you build a multitude of options that win often for the least financial investment so that you can extract the maximum reward for the least, cost. And approaching it from the perspective of, well, I'm going to buy this promo summoner, or I'm going to buy, that legendary card that's, alpha or beta, or, there's certain really expensive cards because I think they're cool. They probably are going to appreciate significantly. But the question is, are they going to help you in the short term, maximizing your rewards for your time and attention? And I would argue that's where Waka falls. That's where he fails. And so, fine card, but I won't be buying one, I don't think, now or ever. Guys, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.